When Daniel Whitmore brought Amara Lewis to his family's elite gala, he didn't know those whispers in the chandelier-lit ballroom would explode into a war that would cost him everything. His father's words cut deeper than any blade. A black wife will ruin our legacy. And suddenly Daniel had to choose between a fortune and the woman who made him feel alive for the first time in his privileged life. But here's what his father didn't know. Buried beneath layers of old paint in a forgotten family portrait was a secret that would shatter everything Edward Whitmore believed about bloodlines, purity, and the legacy he'd spent a lifetime protecting. What Amara discovered would either destroy them all or become the key to a redemption no one saw coming. Subscribe right now and comment where you're watching from, because this story proves that sometimes the people trying hardest to protect their legacy are the ones who understand it least. The chandeliers sparkled like 1,000 tiny suns. Amara Lewis stood at the entrance of the Whitmore estate, her heart beating fast against her ribs. The silver dress Daniel had helped her pick out shimmered under the lights. It was beautiful. She was beautiful. But standing here, watching the crowd of wealthy white faces turn to stare, she felt like she was wearing a sign instead of a dress. "You okay?" Daniel whispered. His hand found the small of her back, warm and reassuring. She nodded. Lying felt easier than explaining the tightness in her chest. The annual Whitmore Foundation Gala. Daniel had talked about it for weeks, his voice bright with excitement. He wanted her here, wanted everyone to meet her. She'd said yes because she loved him, because 3 months together had felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. But now, walking through the crowd, she felt every eye. Some people smiled, most didn't. The whispers started like wind through trees, soft at first, then impossible to ignore. "That's her? I heard she works at some little studio downtown. How interesting." Daniel's jaw tightened. She felt it in the way his hand pressed harder against her back, protective but tense. They moved toward the bar, and a woman in diamonds stepped directly into their path. "Daniel!" She kissed both his cheeks, European style. Her eyes slid to Amara, bright and assessing. "And who's this lovely friend?" "This is Amara," Daniel said. His voice carried an edge. "My girlfriend." The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How wonderful." "And what do you do, Amara?" "I restore paintings," Amara said. She kept her voice steady, professional. "Old portraits mostly." "How quaint." The woman touched Daniel's arm. "Your father's looking for you, darling. Something about the speech." Daniel excused them, his hand never leaving Amara's back. They wove through the crowd, and she noticed how people parted. Some nodded at Daniel with respect. Others looked at her with curiosity or thinly veiled disapproval. One elderly man actually turned his back as they passed. Edward Whitmore stood near the grand staircase, commanding the space like a king in his castle, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that made people straighten their spines. He saw them approaching. His face went carefully blank. "Father," Daniel said, "I'd like you to meet—" "We'll talk later," Edward cut him off. His eyes touched Amara for half a second, then dismissed her entirely. "Excuse me?" He walked away. Just like that, as if she were invisible. Daniel's face flushed red. "I'm sorry, he's just—" "It's fine," Amara said quickly. The lie tasted bitter. Really, but it wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. The evening crawled forward. They made small talk with people whose names Amara forgot instantly. A few were kind, most were coldly polite, the kind of politeness that felt like a slap. Daniel tried to keep her spirits up, bringing her champagne, pointing out the artwork on the walls, telling stories that made her smile despite everything. But she felt it, the weight of being watched, of being judged, of being the wrong color in a room full of white faces and old money. Near midnight she escaped to the bathroom, locked herself in a stall and pressed her forehead against the cool metal door. Her reflection in the mirror showed smudged mascara and tired eyes. She fixed it, lifted her chin and went back out. The hallway was empty except for voices drifting from around the corner. She recognized Daniel's voice, and his father's, low and sharp. "Absolutely unacceptable. She's brilliant and kind and I love her." "Love." Edward's laugh was bitter. "You're 31 years old. This isn't some college experiment. Do you understand what you're risking?" Amara's feet stopped moving. She should walk away, should give them privacy. But she couldn't make her legs work. "A black wife will ruin our legacy," Edward said, each word precise and cutting. "Everything your grandfather built, everything I've protected, gone. Because you couldn't think beyond—" "Beyond what?" Daniel's voice rose. "Beyond my own happiness? Beyond finding someone who actually gives a damn about me instead of my last name? Watch your tone. No, you watch yours. Amara is the best thing that's ever happened to me, and if you can't see that, then what? You'll throw away your inheritance, your position on the board, your future? Silence. Heavy and thick. Amara's hand found the wall. Her vision blurred. She'd heard enough. More than enough. She turned and walked, fast, through the hallway, past the ballroom, out the front doors into the cool night air. Her heels clicked against the stone steps. Someone called her name. Daniel's voice, distant, but she kept going. The valet looked startled when she asked for a cab. "Are you sure, miss? I can get Mr. Whitmore. A cab, please." 10 minutes later, she was gone. Amara sat in her apartment, still wearing the silver dress. Her studio space was small but hers, one room that served as living room, bedroom and workspace. Canvases lined the walls. The smell of paint and linseed oil usually comforted her. Tonight, it just reminded her how different her world was from Daniel's. She'd met him 3 months ago at a gallery downtown. He'd stood in front of her restored portrait for 20 minutes, just staring. When he finally spoke, he asked about her technique, her process, her inspiration, not about her price or her credentials. He listened like her words mattered. They'd gone for coffee, then dinner, then more dinners. He made her laugh, made her feel seen in a way she'd never experienced before. Color hadn't mattered in the bubble they'd built together, but bubbles pop. She wiped her eyes and reached for her painting supplies. When emotions got too big, she painted. It was the only thing that helped. The knock came at dawn, soft but insistent. She knew who it was before she opened the door. Daniel stood there, soaked through. His expensive suit clung to him, his hair dripping water onto her doormat. His eyes were red. "I'm sorry," he said. "God, Amara, I'm so sorry." She wanted to slam the door, wanted to protect herself from more hurt. But seeing him like this, shivering and miserable, something in her chest cracked open. "Come in," she whispered. He stepped inside, leaving wet footprints on her wood floor. She grabbed a towel from the bathroom and handed it to him. He dried his face, but didn't seem to know what to do with his hands after that. "I told him," Daniel said, "after you left. I told him exactly what I thought of his bigotry and his precious legacy." "Daniel, no, listen. He gave me an ultimatum, love or inheritance. He actually said that. Choose between you and everything else." Amara's stomach twisted. "And what did you say?" He looked at her then, really looked at her. His eyes held something fierce and desperate and completely genuine. "I chose you," he said. "I'll always choose you." The words should have made her happy, but all she felt was heavy. "You shouldn't have to choose." "Maybe not, but I did." He stepped closer. "I don't care about the money, the house, the board position. None of it matters if I lose you." "You say that now," she said quietly. "But what about next month, next year, when you're cut off from everything you've ever known? Then I'll build something new." His hand reached for hers, hesitant. "With you, if you'll have me." She looked down at their joined hands, his pale against her brown. Such a simple thing, but the world made it complicated. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Me too," he said, "but I'm more scared of living without you." The sun rose slowly, painting her apartment in shades of gold and amber. They made breakfast together, eggs and toast, because it was all she had. Daniel's expensive suit hung over her shower rod, drying. He wore her oversized art shirt and looked ridiculous and perfect. They didn't talk about his father, didn't talk about money or legacy or any of it. They just existed together in her small paint-stained world, and for a few hours it felt like enough. Catherine Whitmore had driven past the apartment 3 times before she worked up the courage to park. She'd followed Daniel yesterday morning, curious and concerned. Watched him knock on that door, soaked and desperate. Watched him be let inside. She'd sat in her car for an hour, thinking about her husband's rage the night before, the things he'd said, the cruelty in his voice. Thinking about the young woman in the silver dress who'd held her head high even as whispers cut her down. Thinking about what kind of person she wanted to be. Now it was afternoon, and she stood outside Amara's art restoration studio. The sign was hand-painted, simple but elegant. Through the window she could see someone working. Amara, bent over a canvas, completely focused. Catherine pushed the door open. A bell chimed. Amara looked up. Her eyes widened in recognition, then shuttered, closed, guarded. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said carefully. "Catherine, please." She moved closer, taking in the space. Paintings in various stages of restoration lined the walls. The smell of mineral spirits and old canvas filled the air. It was honest work, beautiful work. I was hoping you might look at something for me. She pulled a photo from her purse. An old portrait, oil on canvas, darkened with age and smoke damage. Amara took it, her professional mask sliding into place. This is 18th century, French technique. Where did you get it? It's been in Edward's family for generations. I've always wanted it restored, but Catherine trailed off. I never got around to it. They talked about the restoration process. Amara's voice changed when she discussed her work. Confident, knowledgeable, passionate. Catherine found herself genuinely interested, asking questions, listening to the answers. Finally, Amara set the photo down. Why are you really here? Catherine had expected the question. She'd prepared an answer. But sitting here, looking at this young woman who'd done nothing wrong except love her son, all the prepared words seemed hollow. I want you to know that I don't share my husband's views, she said quietly. I never have. But you stay with him. Yes. Catherine's throat tightened. I stay. I make excuses. I tell myself I can change him slowly, from the inside. Maybe that makes me a coward. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Catherine studied her hands, 60 years old and still wearing her wedding ring, still playing the role of dutiful wife. I'm not asking you to forgive him, or me. I just wanted you to know that what he said, it's fear talking. Fear of change, of losing control. That doesn't make it hurt less. No, Catherine agreed. It doesn't. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, traffic hummed past. Inside, time felt suspended. He won't give in easily, Catherine said finally. Edward's never been told no, never had to question his worldview. You need to understand that. Daniel's already chosen. I know. I saw him this morning. He looked happy. Catherine smiled sadly. I haven't seen him look that happy in years. That should tell me something, shouldn't it? Amara's expression softened slightly. Just slightly. Will you be okay? When Edward finds out you came here? I'll manage. Catherine stood, gathering her purse. I've managed for 35 years. At the door she paused. For what it's worth, I think you're exactly what my son needs, and I hope someday he'll see what I see. What's that? That legacy isn't about blood or money or keeping things the way they've always been. Catherine's eyes misted. It's about love and courage and choosing to be better than the generation before. She left before Amara could respond. Later, when Catherine checked her phone, she saw the news alert. Someone had photographed her entering and leaving the studio. The headline was already circulating. Whitmore matriarch visits son's controversial girlfriend. Edward would see it by dinner. She'd deal with it then. Daniel's phone buzzed at 7 in the morning, then again at 7:05. Then it didn't stop. He grabbed it from Amara's nightstand, squinting at the screen. 23 missed calls, 47 text messages. His stomach dropped. What's wrong? Amara mumbled, still half asleep. He didn't answer, just opened his news app and saw the headline. Whitmore Eyre's secret affair shocks Charleston society. Below it, a photo. Him and Amara leaving the gala. Another of his mother at the studio. A third of him standing in Amara's doorway at dawn, soaking wet. The article speculated wildly. Some of it was true. Most was exaggerated gossip dressed up as journalism. But the damage was done. His phone rang. His father's number. He declined it. It rang again immediately. You have to answer, Amara said. She was awake now, reading over his shoulder. Her face had gone pale. He didn't want to, but she was right. Hello, father. My office. 9 o'clock. Edward's voice could have frozen fire. Don't be late. The line went dead. Daniel looked at Amara. Her eyes were wide, afraid. He wanted to tell her it would be okay, wanted to promise that nothing would change, but he'd never been good at lying. The Whitmore family office occupied the top floor of a historic building downtown. Daniel had spent every summer here as a teenager, learning the business, preparing to inherit his father's empire. Now, walking through the door, he felt like a stranger. Edward sat behind his desk. The family lawyer flanked him, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who'd never smiled in his life. Sit, Edward said. Daniel remained standing. Whatever you're going to say, just say it. Edward slid a folder across the desk. Your trust fund is frozen. Your credit cards are cancelled. Your board position is terminated effective immediately. Your apartment, the one the family owns, will need to be vacated by the end of the week. The words landed like punches. Daniel's vision tunneled. You can't. I can, and I have. Edward's face was granite. This is what choosing her looks like, son. Take a good look. This is your future. The lawyer cleared his throat. If you end the relationship, Mr. Whitmore is willing to reinstate. No. The word came out harder than Daniel intended. He met his father's eyes and saw something flicker there. Surprise, maybe, or disappointment. I'm not ending anything, Daniel said. So if that's your only offer, we're done here. He turned to leave. You'll regret this, Edward called after him, when the money runs out, when your friends stop calling, when you realize what you've thrown away for some... Daniel spun back. Finish that sentence, I dare you. Edward's mouth closed. For the first time in Daniel's life, his father looked away first. I didn't raise you to be a fool, Edward said quietly. No, Daniel agreed. You raised me to value reputation over people, money over love, image over truth. Maybe I don't want to be the man you tried to make me. He left before his father could respond. Outside, the sun was too bright, the street too loud. He walked 6 blocks before his legs gave out, and he sat on a bench, head in his hands, trying to process what had just happened. His phone buzzed. Amara, how did it go? He stared at the message. Then he called her. I'm free, he said when she answered. His voice cracked on the word. For the first time in my life, I'm completely free. What did he do? He told her everything. When he finished, there was silence on her end, then a shaky breath. I'm so sorry, she whispered. Don't be. This is his choice, not yours. He stood, started walking back toward her apartment, toward home. I need to pack my things. Can I stay with you? Just until I figure something out? Daniel. Her voice was thick with emotion. You don't have to ask. I know, but I wanted to anyway. Then yes, of course. He spent the afternoon at his apartment, his former apartment, packing boxes. A lifetime reduced to a dozen cardboard containers. His expensive suits, his books, his photographs. All of it felt heavy and foreign, like someone else's life. By evening, he'd moved everything into Amara's studio apartment. She helped him unpack, finding space that didn't exist, making room for him in her already crowded life. That night, they lay in her small bed, their bodies pressed close by necessity. Outside, Charleston hummed with its usual Friday night energy. Inside, everything felt different, smaller, simpler, real. Are you okay? Amara asked. Her head rested on his chest, her breath warm against his skin. I don't know, he admitted. Ask me tomorrow. She was quiet for a moment, then, I'm proud of you. The words hit him harder than expected. His eyes burned. Thank you. I mean it. What you did today, that took real courage. It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like I just blew up my entire life. Maybe that's what courage looks like sometimes. She propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him. Starting over. Choosing love even when it costs you everything. He touched her face, traced the curve of her cheek. I'd do it again. 1,000 times. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And for the first time since walking out of his father's office, Daniel felt something besides fear and regret. He felt hope. 2 days later, Daniel learned what ordinary life felt like. Grocery shopping without a credit card meant counting cash and comparing prices. Cooking without a personal chef meant burned eggs and smoke alarms. Fixing a leaky faucet without calling maintenance meant YouTube videos and confused cursing. Amara found it hilarious. You're doing it wrong, she said, watching him struggle with the wrench. I'm doing my best. Here. She nudged him aside, her smaller hands somehow finding the right angle. The faucet stopped dripping. There. He stared at her. Show off. I grew up fixing things. She wiped her hands on her jeans. You grew up with people who fixed things for you. It's okay, you'll learn. They were different people from different worlds. He was realizing that more each day. But the differences didn't feel like obstacles. They felt like opportunities to learn, to grow, to become someone better. That evening they walked to the corner market for bread and milk. A woman recognized him, Mrs. Patterson, who used to host the same charity luncheons as his mother. Daniel Whitmore, she said, her voice carrying across the produce section. I heard about your situation. Several people turned to look. Mrs. Patterson, Daniel said evenly. He reached for Amara's hand. This is Amara, my girlfriend. Yes, I saw the pictures. Mrs. Patterson's smile was thin. Such a shame, your poor father. My poor father, Daniel repeated. Right. The woman looked between them, her expression sharp. How you know, dear, she said to Amara. There are services for young women in your position. If you need help, I'm not in any position that needs help, Amara said quietly. But thank you for your concern. The woman's lips pursed. She walked away without another word. Amara's hand trembled in his. He squeezed it gently. "I hate this," she whispered. "I hate that people think I'm some kind of gold digger or—" "They're wrong, but they don't know that. They see me and they make assumptions and—" "Hey," he turned her to face him, right there in the middle of the produce section. "Look at me. Their opinions don't matter. The only thing that matters is this, us. Okay?" She nodded, but her eyes were wet. They walked home in silence, the weight of judgment heavy on their shoulders. That night, lying in bed, Daniel pulled her close and whispered the words he'd been holding back for weeks. "I love you." Amara went still. Then she turned to look at him, her eyes searching his face in the dim light. "Say it again," she breathed. "I love you, Amara Lewis. I've loved you since that first day in the gallery. I'll love you when we're broke and struggling. I'll love you when the whole world thinks I'm crazy. I'll love you forever if you'll let me." A tear slipped down her cheek, then another, but she was smiling. "I love you too," she said. "So much it scares me." "Good scared or bad scared?" "Both," she laughed through her tears. "Because I keep waiting for this to fall apart. For you to wake up and realize what you've given up. For the fairy tale to end." "This isn't a fairy tale," he said. "Fairy tales are easy. This is real. And real is messy and hard, and sometimes it hurts. But I'd rather have messy and real with you than perfect and empty with anyone else." She kissed him then, deep and desperate and full of all the words they hadn't said. And for those few precious moments, the small apartment, the judgmental neighbors, the uncertain future, none of it mattered. They had each other. It would have to be enough. Morning light streamed through the window, turning Amara's small apartment golden. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, sketching on a legal pad. Numbers and floor plans covered the page. Amara worked nearby, her hands steady, as she cleaned a portrait from the 1920s. "What if we opened a gallery?" Daniel said suddenly. Amara looked up. "What?" "A gallery downtown. We could showcase local artists, offer restoration services, host exhibitions." His eyes were bright with possibility. "You have the expertise. I have business experience. We could make it work." She set down her brush. "Galleries are expensive to start. I have some savings. From before. A separate account my father didn't know about." He pushed the pad toward her. "Look, if we keep expenses low, rent a small space, do most of the work ourselves." She studied his calculations. The numbers were tight but possible. Her heart began to beat faster. "We'd be partners," she asked. "In everything." A smile tugged at her lips. "Then we better start looking for spaces." They spent the afternoon walking downtown, peering through windows, taking notes. Most places were too expensive or too big. But in the art district, tucked between a coffee shop and a bookstore, they found it. A small storefront with good natural light and exposed brick walls. The rent was manageable. The space was perfect. Daniel called the landlord right there on the sidewalk. By evening, they had an appointment to tour it properly. "This could really work," Amara said as they walked home. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. "It's actually happening." "It's happening," Daniel agreed. He squeezed her hand. "We're building something. Together." That night, a letter arrived. No return address. Just Catherine's handwriting on an envelope containing a check and a brief note. "For the gallery. From someone who believes in new beginnings." Amara pressed the check to her chest, tears streaming. "Your mother. She's trying," Daniel said softly, "in the only way she can." 2 weeks later, Tara Lewis showed up unannounced. Amara's older sister stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She wore scrubs from her shift at the hospital and looked ready for a fight. "So," Tara said, "you're the guy who got my sister on the front page." Daniel stood. "I'm Daniel. You must be—" "Save it." Tara pushed past him into the apartment. She looked around, taking in the cramped space, the boxes still unpacked, the life her sister had taken on. "Amara, can we talk alone? Anything you say to me, you can say in front of Daniel." Tara's jaw tightened. Then she sighed. "Fine. Are you out of your mind?" "Tara, no, seriously. You meet this guy 3 months ago, and suddenly you're front-page news. His family hates you, people are saying terrible things, and for what?" "For love," Amara said quietly. "Love doesn't pay rent, baby sister. Love doesn't protect you when his rich friends decide to make your life hell. Love doesn't—" "Love is enough," Daniel interrupted. Both women turned to look at him. "I know you have every reason to doubt me, to think I'm just some privileged kid playing at rebellion, but I'm not going anywhere. Your sister is the best thing in my life, and I will do whatever it takes to prove I'm worthy of her." Tara studied him for a long moment. Then she turned to Amara. Does he always talk like that? Unfortunately, yes. Tara sat down on the couch. Okay, here's the deal. You hurt her, and I don't care how rich your family is. I know people who make problems disappear. Tara! Amara looked mortified, but Daniel smiled. Fair enough. Something shifted in Tara's expression. Not quite approval, but close. So what's this I hear about a gallery? They spent the next hour talking about the plans. Tara asked hard questions, poked holes in their budget, made them think through problems they hadn't considered. But by the time she left, she hugged Amara tight and whispered, "He's better than I expected. Don't tell him I said that." The soft opening happened on a Friday evening. They'd spent 2 weeks painting walls, installing lights, arranging displays. The gallery was small but beautiful. Amara's restored pieces hung alongside work from local artists. Daniel had designed simple but elegant labels for each piece. 20 people came, mostly friends and curious neighbors. No one from Daniel's old social circle, but it didn't matter. The people who showed up were genuine, interested, kind. Then Angela Hartford walked in. She was from Daniel's world. Old money, older prejudices. Her husband served on 3 boards with Edward Whitmore. She wore pearls and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Daniel," she said, air-kissing his cheeks. "What a charming space." The pause before space said everything. "Thank you for coming," Daniel said carefully. Angela's gaze swept the room and landed on Amara. "And you must be the artist everyone's talking about." "Art restorer," Amara corrected. She kept her voice professional. "Would you like to hear about any of the pieces?" "Oh, I'm sure they're very authentic." Angela touched a frame with one manicured finger. "You know, Daniel, your father was just saying the other day how much he misses having you at the board meetings. Such important decisions being made. Decisions that affect the family's future. I'm sure he'll manage," Daniel said. "Will he, though?" Angela's smile sharpened. "Families are delicate things. Break them, and sometimes they can't be put back together." She left after that, having said what she came to say. Amara's hands shook as she straightened a frame that didn't need straightening. Daniel came up behind her, his presence warm and solid. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "For what? You didn't invite her." "No. But she came because of me. Because hurting you hurts me, and people like her enjoy that." Amara turned to face him. The gallery was nearly empty now, just a few stragglers examining the artwork. "Your father sent her, didn't he?" "Probably. Does he really think this will work? That a few mean comments will make us give up?" Daniel touched her cheek. "I think he's desperate, and desperate people do foolish things." That night, they locked up the gallery and walked home through quiet streets. Amara felt tired but satisfied. Their first opening, their first step toward building something real. Then they reached their apartment building and saw the notice taped to the door. Eviction, 30 days. Daniel tore the paper down, scanning it quickly. "This doesn't make sense. We're paid up through next month." "Look at the signature," Amara said. The building's owner, a name Daniel recognized, one of his father's business associates. They stood there in the warm night air, the eviction notice fluttering in Daniel's hand. Around them, the city hummed with Friday night energy. Inside, Amara felt something cold settle in her chest. "He can't let us just be happy," she said. Not a question, a statement. "No," Daniel agreed. "I guess he can't." They climbed the stairs to their apartment in silence. Inside, Daniel immediately got on his phone, calling lawyers, trying to find out if the eviction was legal. Amara sat on the bed and stared at nothing. She'd known this would be hard, known they'd face obstacles, but she hadn't understood the scope of Edward Whitmore's reach. How many people owed him favors? How far he'd go to prove a point? Daniel hung up, his face grim. "The eviction is technically legal. He bought the building 2 days ago. New owners can terminate month-to-month leases with proper notice. So we have 30 days. We have 30 days. Amara laughed, but it came out bitter. "Your father really doesn't do things halfway." Daniel sat beside her. For a long time neither spoke. Then he took her hand. "We'll find somewhere else," he said. "Somewhere he can't touch. Can such a place exist?" "It has to." But that night, lying in bed, Amara stared at the ceiling and wondered how long they could keep fighting. How many battles before they just ran out of strength? 3 weeks later, they moved into a tiny apartment above a bakery. The smell of bread baking woke them at 5 every morning. The space was smaller than the last place, with a slanted ceiling and temperamental plumbing. But the rent was cheap, and the landlord, an elderly Vietnamese woman named Mrs. Nguyen, didn't care about their story. She just wanted reliable tenants. "It's perfect," Amara lied, looking around the cramped room. Daniel smiled tiredly. You're a terrible liar. I know. They unpacked boxes again, made the space feel like home again. But money was getting tight. The gallery brought in some income, but not enough. Not yet. Daniel took freelance design jobs, working late into the night. Amara picked up every restoration project she could find. Bills piled up anyway. One morning, Tara showed up with groceries. Before you get proud on me, she said, pushing past Amara, I got these on sale, practically free, and I can't eat all this before it goes bad. So really, you're doing me a favor. Amara knew it was a lie, but she was too tired and too grateful to argue. Thank you, she whispered. Tara hugged her. You look exhausted. I'm fine. You're not? Neither is he. Tara nodded toward the corner where Daniel sat hunched over his laptop, dark circles under his eyes. Love doesn't pay rent, remember. We're managing. Are you? Amara didn't answer, because the truth was, she didn't know. They were surviving, but surviving wasn't the same as living. After Tara left, Amara went back to her restoration work. She was cleaning a portrait from the 1800s when she noticed something strange. The canvas had been painted over. Carefully, she began removing the top layer of paint. Underneath, another image emerged. Hours later, she sat back, stunned. The original portrait was stunning. A woman in period dress, her features delicate and proud, but it was clear the painting had been altered. Someone had lightened the woman's skin tone and changed her hair texture. Why would someone do that? She took photos, documented everything, then kept working. It felt important, though she wasn't sure why. That evening, Daniel came home with news. I ran into Graham today, he said. Graham had been his friend since college. They'd lost touch after the scandal broke. How is he? Engaged. New job. Life's good. Daniel's voice was flat. My father offered him my old position on the board. Amara set down the paintbrush she'd been cleaning. Oh, yeah. Graham said he felt weird about taking it, but it's a good opportunity. I told him to take it. Did you mean that? Daniel sat on their second-hand couch. I don't know. Maybe. It hurts, seeing someone else living the life I used to have. But then I look around here and I see you and I think, I don't actually want that life back. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. He pulled her into his lap. She went willingly, curling against his chest. Outside, the city rumbled with evening traffic. Inside, they held each other and pretended everything was fine. The next day, Amara found an anonymous note slipped under the gallery door. He'll crawl back to his kind eventually. They always do. Her hands shook as she read it, then read it again. The handwriting was unfamiliar, the message clear. She crumpled the paper and threw it away. Didn't mention it to Daniel. He had enough to worry about. But that night she lay awake thinking about those words. His kind. As if love could be sorted into categories. As if people belonged to separate worlds that should never touch. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was fooling herself thinking this could work. The art fair happened on a Saturday in early October. Downtown Charleston hosted it every year. Local artists selling their work, food trucks, live music. Amara and Daniel set up a booth to promote the gallery. They brought photos of restored pieces and information about upcoming exhibitions. The day started well. People were friendly, interested. Several artists signed up to show their work in the gallery. A few customers commissioned restoration projects. Then the whispers started. A group of women stood nearby, pretending to look at another booth but clearly talking about them. Amara caught fragments of conversation. Shameless. Using him for his money. What did she expect? Daniel heard it too. His jaw clenched. Ignore them, Amara said quietly. I don't want to ignore them. I want to... Daniel, please. He took a breath, nodded. They went back to smiling at passers-by, handing out business cards, acting like everything was normal. But it wasn't normal. Amara felt every stare, heard every whisper. The weight of judgment pressed down on her shoulders until she wanted to scream. Then Lucas showed up, the 10-year-old boy with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile. Daniel's godson, Catherine's grandson from her daughter who lived in Atlanta. Uncle Daniel! Lucas barreled into him, nearly knocking over their display. Hey, buddy! Daniel caught him laughing. What are you doing here? Grandma brought me. She said you had a booth and I wanted to see. Lucas turned to Amara, suddenly shy. Are you Amara? I am. Grandma showed me pictures of the paintings you fix. They're really cool. Something warm bloomed in Amara's chest. Thank you, Lucas. Catherine appeared then, elegant in casual clothes. She smiled at them both. I hope you don't mind us dropping by. Of course not, Daniel said, but his eyes held a question. "Is my father with you?" Catherine shook her head slightly. "Edward's at home. He doesn't know we're here." They spent the next hour together. Lucas asked a million questions about art and restoration. He wanted to know how old the oldest painting was, whether Amara had ever made a mistake. If you could fix a painting that was ripped. Amara answered each question patiently, and she noticed something. People stopped whispering when Catherine was there. The Whitmore name carried weight, even when half the family disapproved. As they were packing up, Lucas hugged Daniel tight. "I miss you," he said. "It's not the same at Grandpa's house without you." Daniel's eyes went suspiciously bright. "I miss you too, buddy." After they left, Amara turned to Daniel. "He's sweet." "Yeah, he is." Daniel wiped his eyes. "I used to see him every week. Now, maybe we can change that. Maybe." They finished packing in silence, both lost in thought. The day had been good and hard at the same time. Proof that life wasn't simple, that every victory came with complications, but they'd survived it. Together. That had to count for something. The next week brought unexpected good news. Amara got a call from the Charleston Historical Society. They wanted her to restore an entire collection of portraits from the antebellum period. The pay was excellent. The work was prestigious. She hung up and screamed with joy. Daniel came running from the other room. "What? What happened?" she told him, talking so fast her words ran together. He picked her up and spun her around their tiny apartment, both of them laughing. "This is it," he said. "This is our break, she agreed. That evening, they celebrated with cheap wine and take-out Chinese food. They ate sitting on the floor, talking about the future, about what they'd do with the money, how they'd expand the gallery, maybe hire help, maybe take a vacation. For the first time in weeks, the future felt bright instead of scary. Daniel raised his plastic cup. "To new beginnings. To us," Amara added. They clinked cups and drank and let themselves believe that maybe, just maybe, things were turning around. The knock came at 9 o'clock. Daniel opened the door to find Catherine standing there, her face pale. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Can I come in?" They made tea. Catherine sat on their couch, her hands wrapped around the mug like she was cold. Finally, she spoke. "Edward's gotten worse," she said. "The anger, the resentment. He barely sleeps, barely eats. All he does is sit in his study, planning ways to win." "Win what?" Amara asked. "You. This situation. He sees it as a battle he's losing and he can't stand it." Catherine looked at Daniel. "There's going to be a luncheon next month, honoring your father for his charitable work. It's a big deal. The governor will be there, major donors, press coverage. Let me guess, I'm not invited." "You're invited." Catherine set down her mug. "Edward sent the invitation himself. I think he's planning something." "Like what?" "I don't know. But I wanted to warn you, be careful. Both of you." After she left, Amara and Daniel looked at each other. "It's a trap," Amara said. "Probably. So we don't go." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then, "Or we do, and we show him that we're not afraid, that we're not going anywhere." "Daniel, I know it's risky. I know he might try to humiliate us, but running and hiding, that's what he expects. What if we don't give him that satisfaction?" Amara thought about it. Every instinct said to stay away, to avoid the confrontation. But another part of her, the part that was tired of being made to feel small, wanted to go, wanted to walk in there with her head high and show everyone that love was nothing to be ashamed of. "Okay," she said finally. "We go. Together." Daniel took her hand. Together. The invitation sat on their kitchen counter for 2 weeks. Heavy cream paper, embossed gold lettering. "The Charleston Heritage Foundation requests the honor of your presence at a luncheon honoring Edward Whitmore for his lifetime of philanthropic service." Amara looked at it every morning and felt her stomach twist. "We can still back out," Daniel said one evening. He was washing dishes while she dried. Their nightly routine. "Do you want to?" "No, but I want you to be comfortable more than I want to prove a point." She set down the dish towel. "I'm not comfortable, but I'm also tired of hiding. Tired of feeling like we did something wrong. We didn't. I know that up here." She tapped her head. "But sometimes my heart forgets." He dried his hands and pulled her close. They stood like that in their tiny kitchen above the bakery, holding each other while the city hummed outside their windows. Tara called the next day. "I heard about the luncheon," she said. No greeting. Straight to the point. "How did you—" "Catherine told me." "She's worried." Amara blinked. "When did you talk to Catherine?" "She came by the hospital last week. Wanted to apologize for her husband. We had coffee. Tara paused. She's not what I expected. Me neither. Listen, baby sister. If you're really doing this, you need to be prepared. Edward Whitmore is going to try to break you in public in front of everyone who matters in this city. I know. Do you? Because it's one thing to know it intellectually. It's another thing to stand there while someone powerful tries to destroy you with words. Amara's throat tightened. What would you do? Honestly, I'd tell him to go to hell and stay home. Tara sighed. But you're not me, and I get why you need to do this. Just don't let him make you small. You're worth 10 of him. Remember that. After they hung up, Amara stood in the gallery, surrounded by beautiful things that had been broken and restored. She thought about how paint could crack and fade, how canvas could tear, but with patience and skill and care, even the most damaged pieces could be saved. Maybe people were the same way. The morning of the luncheon, Amara woke early. She'd bought a dress from a consignment shop. Nothing fancy, but it fit well and made her feel confident. Daniel wore a suit he'd kept from his old life, one of the few expensive things he hadn't sold. They got ready in silence. The weight of what they were about to do pressed down on them both. You look beautiful, Daniel said as she finished her makeup. You look nervous. I am nervous. He straightened his tie. I haven't seen most of these people since everything happened. And my father, his voice caught. I don't know what he's going to do. Amara took his hands. Whatever happens, we leave together. The second it gets too much, we walk out. Deal? Deal. They drove to the hotel in Daniel's old car, a 10-year-old sedan that barely ran but got them where they needed to go. The parking lot was full of Mercedes and BMWs. Their car looked out of place, just like they were about to. The ballroom was elegant. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths. Hundreds of Charleston's elite gathered to honor Edward Whitmore. Amara felt every eye turn as they entered. The whispers started immediately. That's them, the nerve. Did he actually bring her here? Daniel's hand found hers. They walked through the crowd with their heads high, looking for their assigned table. People parted to let them pass. Some faces were curious, others hostile. A few showed something like pity. Their table was near the back. Of course it was. They sat down beside a younger couple who looked uncomfortable with their seating assignment. The woman smiled tightly. The man didn't make eye contact. Daniel leaned close to Amara. You okay? Ask me later. The luncheon began. Salads were served. Wine was poured. At the head table, Edward Whitmore sat beside the governor and several prominent businessmen. Catherine sat beside him, her face carefully neutral. Edward hadn't looked their direction once. The speeches started after the main course. Various people stood to praise Edward's charitable work, his business acumen, his dedication to preserving Charleston's heritage. That last word made Amara's stomach turn. Then Edward himself stood to speak. The room went silent. He commanded attention effortlessly. Tall, silver-haired, powerful. He thanked everyone for coming, talked about the importance of tradition and family values. In these changing times, he said, his voice carrying across the ballroom, it's more important than ever to remember who we are, where we come from, the legacy we leave for future generations. His eyes swept the room. For the first time, they landed on Daniel and Amara. Some people think change means abandoning our principles, forgetting the standards that made us great. But I believe true strength comes from staying true to what we know is right, even when it's difficult, even when we're challenged by those who don't understand our world. Amara's face burned. Around them people shifted uncomfortably. Some nodded in agreement, others looked away. Daniel's hand tightened on hers under the table. Edward continued talking, never mentioning them directly, but making his meaning crystal clear. Every word was a knife, carefully sharpened and precisely aimed. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. A reporter near the front raised her hand during the Q&A session. Mr. Whitmore, there's been speculation about tension within your family. Your son Daniel is here today with... My son's personal life is his own business, Edward cut her off, but his smile was cold. Though I hope he'll eventually remember where he comes from and make choices that honor that. The reporter pressed. So you don't approve of his relationship? Edward paused. The silence stretched. Then, I believe in traditional values, in partnerships that strengthen families rather than complicate them. I think most people here would agree. More applause. Louder this time. Amara felt something inside her crack. She looked at Daniel and saw his face had gone white. His father had just publicly shamed him, questioned his choices, made him look foolish in front of everyone who mattered in his old world. and Daniel was just sitting there, taking it. She stood up. The room noticed immediately. Conversations died. Heads turned. Daniel looked up at her, confused. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. She walked toward the front of the room. Her heels clicked against the marble floor. Each step felt like walking through fire, but she kept going. Edward watched her approach. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or fear. She stopped at the microphone. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice shook, but she forced it steady. "I'm Amara Lewis, Daniel Whitmore's girlfriend." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Someone gasped. "I don't normally speak in front of people like this, but I've been sitting here listening to talk about family and tradition and legacy, and I need to say something." Edward started to stand. "Young lady, this isn't—" "I love your son," she said. The words came out clear and strong. "I love him for his kindness, for his courage, for the way he treats people with respect, no matter who they are. And yes, I know our relationship makes some people uncomfortable. I know I'm not what you expected or wanted for him." She looked directly at Edward now. "But love isn't about meeting expectations. It's not about making things easy or comfortable. It's about choosing someone and standing by them even when the whole world tells you not to." Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard and continued. "Daniel gave up everything to be with me. His money, his position, his father's approval. Things most people wouldn't sacrifice for anything. And you know what? He did it without hesitation, because that's the kind of man he is. That's the kind of man you raised, whether you want to admit it or not." Tears ran down her face now, but she didn't wipe them away. "So you can judge me. You can disapprove. You can try to make us feel small. But you can't change what we have. You can't make love wrong just because it doesn't fit your idea of how things should be." She turned to face the room. "I'm not here to ask for your acceptance. I'm here because the man I love deserves to be here, and I'm proud to stand beside him. That's all." She walked back to her table through complete silence. Daniel stood as she reached him. His eyes were red. Without a word, he took her hand and they walked out together. Behind them, the room exploded into conversation, but they didn't look back. Outside, in the parking lot, Daniel pulled her into his arms and held her so tight she could barely breathe. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice muffled against her hair. "I'm so sorry I just sat there. I should have—" "You didn't need to." "I did." She pulled back to look at him. "Did I mess things up completely?" He laughed, and it came out half-sob. "You were incredible. Terrifying and incredible. Your father's going to hate me even more now." "Probably." Daniel cupped her face. "But I've never loved you more than I do right now." They drove home in stunned silence. Amara couldn't believe what she'd done. Couldn't believe she'd stood in front of Charleston's elite and spoken her truth. Her whole body shook with adrenaline and fear and something that might have been pride. That evening, her phone exploded with messages. Some were cruel. Anonymous texts calling her names, telling her to leave Daniel alone, saying horrible things about her race and her worth. But others were different. "You were so brave. Thank you for saying what needed to be said. You spoke for all of us who felt judged for who we love." She read through them with tears streaming down her face. Daniel held her that night as she cried from exhaustion and relief. They'd survived. They'd stood up for themselves. And somehow, impossibly, they were still standing. The call came at 2 in the morning. Daniel's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He grabbed it, groggy and confused. "Hello?" Catherine's voice was tight with panic. "Daniel, you need to come to the hospital. It's your father." They dressed in seconds and drove through empty streets. Amara's heart pounded. She kept thinking about Edward's face at the luncheon, the anger in his eyes. The hospital was too bright, too sterile. Catherine met them in the waiting room. Her makeup was smudged. She looked older than Amara had ever seen her. "He collapsed at home," Catherine said. "We were arguing about the luncheon and he grabbed his chest and fell." "Is he—" Daniel couldn't finish the question. "He had a minor stroke. The doctors say he'll recover, but—" She pressed her hands to her face. "It was so scary. He was trying to talk but couldn't, looking at me like he was drowning." Daniel sank into a chair. Amara stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "Can we see him?" Daniel asked. Catherine hesitated. "He hasn't asked for you." The words landed like a blow. Daniel's face crumpled. "But I think you should go anyway," Catherine added softly. "Whether he wants to admit it or not, he needs you." They walked down the corridor to Edward's room. Through the window, Amara could see him lying in bed. He looked smaller somehow, vulnerable. The machines beeped steadily, monitoring his heart. "I should go in alone," Daniel said. "No." Amara surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. "We do this together, remember?" Daniel looked at her, then nodded. They entered the room quietly. Edward's eyes were closed. Catherine followed them in and went to his bedside. "Edward," she said gently, "Daniel's here." Edward's eyes opened. They found Daniel first, then slid to Amara. His expression hardened despite his weakness. A nurse came in to check his vitals. She adjusted the blanket, checked the IV. Edward tried to wave her away, his movements weak and frustrated. The nurse looked overwhelmed, juggling too many tasks. Without thinking, Amara stepped forward. "Let me," she said quietly. She helped adjust the blanket properly, tucking it gently around Edward's shoulders. Her hands were steady and sure. She'd helped Tara with enough patience to know how to do it right. Edward stared at her, really looked at her for the first time since that first night at the gala. She met his eyes. "You need to rest," she said. "Getting upset won't help you heal." Something flickered across his face. Confusion, maybe surprise. When she stepped back, he watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Thank you," he whispered. The words came out rough and strained, but they were there. Amara's breath caught. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. Daniel stood frozen, staring at his father. Edward closed his eyes again, exhausted. The nurse finished her work and left. Catherine gestured for them to step outside. In the hallway, Catherine grabbed Amara's hands. "He never says thank you, not to staff, not to strangers, never." "He's just tired," Amara said. "No, it's more than that." Catherine looked back at the room. "Maybe this will change things. Maybe almost dying will make him see what's important." Amara wanted to believe that, but she'd seen too much to trust easy redemptions. Over the next 2 days, Edward slowly improved. Daniel and Amara visited daily. Catherine had asked them to, and despite everything, they came. Edward was awake more, talking a little. The doctors said he'd been lucky. The stroke was minor. With physical therapy and medication, he'd make a full recovery. On the 3rd day, Edward asked to see Amara alone. Daniel looked uncertain. "Are you sure?" "It's okay," Amara said, but her stomach twisted with nerves. She entered the room. Edward sat propped up in bed, looking less pale but still weak. He gestured to the chair beside him. Amara sat. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Edward said, "My wife tells me you work in art restoration." "Yes." "What kind of pieces do you restore?" It wasn't what she'd expected him to ask. She described her work, the techniques she used, the history behind the paintings, the satisfaction of bringing old beauty back to life. Edward listened, really listened, asked intelligent questions, showed genuine interest. When visiting hours ended and she left, she felt confused. This version of Edward Whitmore didn't match the man who'd tried to destroy them, who'd called her a threat to his legacy. "How was it?" Daniel asked when she came out. "Strange. He was almost human." Catherine smiled. "Maybe we're seeing the real Edward, the one he hides under all that pride and fear. Maybe. Or maybe almost dying had scared him into temporary kindness." Amara didn't know which to believe. The day Edward was discharged, everything changed. Catherine had arranged for him to recover at home with private nurses. Daniel offered to help, and surprisingly, Edward agreed. They drove to the Whitmore estate, the first time Amara had been back since the disastrous gala. The house looked the same, grand, imposing, beautiful in a way that made her feel small. Inside, Edward was settled in his study. The nurses fussed over him. Catherine brought tea. For a few hours it felt almost peaceful. Then, Edward's business partner arrived, William Thorne. Old money, older prejudices. He embraced Edward carefully, mindful of his health. "Good to see you up, old friend," William said. He glanced at Daniel, then at Amara. His smile dimmed. "I didn't realize we'd have company." "Daniel's my son," Edward said. His voice had regained some of its strength. "He's welcome in my home." Of course. But William's eyes said otherwise. He talked about business, about the luncheon, which had raised record donations despite the unfortunate disruption. He talked about tradition and maintaining standards in an increasingly chaotic world. Edward listened, and slowly, Amara watched him change. His shoulders straightened, his face hardened. The man who'd been almost kind in the hospital disappeared, replaced by the patriarch who'd called her a threat. When William finally left, Edward turned to Daniel. "We need to talk, alone." Daniel looked at Amara. She nodded, stood, and left the room. But she heard them through the door, heard Edward's voice cold and firm. "You can love her if you must, but you cannot marry her." Silence. "I'm trying, Daniel. I'm trying to meet you halfway. But marriage, children, bringing her fully into this family that I cannot accept. Then you haven't changed at all. I've changed enough. This is my final offer. Take it or leave it." Amara didn't wait to hear Daniel's response. She walked outside into the garden, her chest tight. Catherine found her there 20 minutes later. "He's frightened," Catherine said softly, "of losing himself, of becoming someone his father wouldn't recognize. His father's been dead for 20 years. I know. But the dead have power over us sometimes. More power than the living." Amara turned to look at her. "Do you think he'll ever really accept me?" Catherine was quiet for a long moment. "I think he wants to. But wanting and doing are different things. And Edward's never been good at doing what's hard." Daniel came out then. His face told her everything. They drove home in silence. Inside their tiny apartment, Daniel finally spoke. "He says we can be together, but no marriage, no children, nothing that would make you officially part of the family." Amara sat down heavily. "So I'm good enough to date but not to marry. That's not what That's exactly what it is." She looked at him. "Your father's giving you permission to have a relationship, as long as it doesn't actually mean anything, as long as I stay in my place." Amara, "And what did you say?" Daniel's jaw clenched. "I told him no, obviously. But he's recovering from a stroke. I didn't want to—" He stopped. I didn't know what to say. She saw it then, the hesitation, the torn feeling. Daniel loved her. She didn't doubt that. But his father's near death had shaken him, made him hope for reconciliation, even if that reconciliation came with conditions. "I need some air," she said. "Please don't go. I'm not leaving. I just need space to think." She walked to the gallery, unlocked the door and sat in the darkness, surrounded by restored art, things that had been broken and fixed, made whole again. Could some things be too broken to fix? The morning light felt too bright. Amara had barely slept. She lay in bed, listening to Daniel's soft breathing beside her. He'd stayed awake with her for hours the night before, talking in circles, trying to reassure her, trying to convince himself. Finally, exhaustion had claimed them both. Now, watching dawn paint the ceiling pink and gold, Amara felt something shift inside her, a decision forming. Daniel woke slowly. His hand found hers under the covers. "Morning," he whispered. "Morning." They lay there, neither speaking. Outside, the bakery below was starting its day. The smell of bread drifted up through the floorboards. Daniel sat up, reached for something on the nightstand. When he turned back, he held a small silver band. Amara's breath caught. "It's not fancy," he said. "I bought it 3 weeks ago from a jewelry shop downtown, paid for it with money I made from freelance work. It's mine. Not my family's, not anyone else's. Just mine." He slipped from the bed and knelt beside it. His eyes were red-rimmed but clear. "Amara Lewis, I know the timing is terrible. I know my father just made everything harder. I know we're broke and struggling, and the whole world seems against us." He took her hand. "But I'd rather have a future without wealth than a past without you." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I can't promise you easy," he continued. "I can't promise my family will ever fully accept you. I can't promise anything except that I will love you every single day for the rest of my life. I will choose you over everything else, every time, without hesitation." He held up the ring. Simple, perfect. "Will you marry me?" She should say no, should protect herself from more hurt, should recognize that loving him meant constant battle, constant judgment, constant pain. But looking at him, this man who'd given up everything, who'd stood by her, who'd chosen love over legacy, she couldn't say anything but yes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. They held each other as the sun rose, and for a moment the future didn't seem so scary. They had each other. They had love. Maybe that would be enough. Maybe it had to be. 2 days later, Amara made a discovery. She was finishing the restoration of an old Whitmore family portrait. Catherine had brought it to the gallery weeks ago, a painting of a woman from the 1800s that had been damaged by smoke. Amara had removed layers of dirt and grime, fixed cracks in the canvas. And now, as she worked on the final details, she noticed something odd. Under the current paint layer, there was another image. Someone had painted over the original. Carefully, using conservation-grade solvents, she began removing the top layer. What emerged made her heart race. The woman in the portrait was different than she'd thought. Her skin tone, originally lighter in the overpaint, was actually darker. Her hair, straightened in the visible version, showed natural texture in the original. Her features suggested mixed heritage. Someone had altered the painting to hide the woman's true appearance. Amara sat back, stunned. She took photos, documented everything. Then she called Catherine. "I need you to come to the gallery," Amara said. "Right now." Catherine arrived 20 minutes later. Amara showed her the portrait. Catherine stared at it for a long moment. Then she started to cry. "This is Elizabeth Whitmore," she said softly. "Edward's great-grandmother. He has a version of this painting in his study, but it looks nothing like this." "Someone changed it," Amara said. "Lightened her skin, changed her features, hid who she really was. Edward's father did it. He was obsessed with appearances, with maintaining the family's reputation." Catherine touched the canvas gently. "I always wondered why Edward never talked about his paternal great-grandmother, why there were so few records of her." "Because she was black," Amara said, "or mixed race, and his father was ashamed." Catherine looked at her. "You have to show this to Edward." "Are you serious? He needs to see it. He needs to know that the legacy he's so desperate to protect was built on a lie." Catherine's voice was firm. "This could change everything." Amara wasn't sure, but she took more photos, compiled the evidence, documented her findings. If this portrait could make Edward see the truth, that his own family was more diverse than he knew, maybe it would change his mind about her and Daniel. Maybe. Or maybe it would make things worse. Only one way to find out. Catherine took the photos to Edward that evening. Amara and Daniel waited at the gallery, unable to sit still. They paced, made tea they didn't drink, checked their phones every 30 seconds. Finally, Catherine called. "He wants to see the original," she said. "And he wants to see you, Amara." "Me? Why me?" "Because you're the one who found it, who restored it." Catherine paused. "He's in his study. Can you bring it tonight?" Amara looked at Daniel. He nodded. "We'll be there in an hour." They wrapped the portrait carefully and loaded it into Daniel's car. The drive to the Whitmore estate felt endless. Amara's hands shook as she held the wrapped canvas. "What if this makes everything worse?" she whispered. "Then we leave. We tried." Daniel squeezed her knee. "But maybe, just maybe, this is what he needs to see." The estate's gates stood open. Catherine met them at the door, her face unreadable. "He's been in his study since I showed him the photos," she said. "He hasn't said a word, just keeps looking at them." They carried the portrait inside. The house felt different tonight, quieter, like it was holding its breath. Edward's study door was closed. Catherine knocked softly. "Come in." They entered. Edward sat at his desk, the photos spread out before him. Old family documents surrounded him, genealogy records, letters, certificates. He'd been researching. He looked up when they came in. His face was grey, exhausted. "Put it there," he said, gesturing to an easel by the window. Amara unwrapped the portrait and set it up. In the lamplight, Elizabeth Whitmore's true face emerged. Beautiful, proud, undeniably mixed race. Edward stood slowly. He walked to the portrait and just stared at it. No one spoke. Finally, Edward turned to Amara. "How did you know to look under the paint?" "I didn't. I noticed irregularities in the brushwork. Places where the technique didn't match the period, so I tested it." She stepped closer. "Someone painted over this carefully. They knew what they were doing. They wanted to hide her." "My father," Edward said. His voice was hollow. "He commissioned this version when I was young, said the original was too damaged to save. He touched the frame. He lied." Catherine moved to his side. "Edward, I've spent my whole life protecting something that never existed." His hand trembled. "The pure bloodline, the untainted legacy. And all this time, Elizabeth was—" He couldn't finish. He sank into his chair. For a moment, he looked every one of his 65 years. "I found her marriage certificate," he said quietly. "Born Elizabeth Moore, daughter of a freed slave and a white merchant. She married my great-grandfather in 1867. They had 4 children. One of them was my grandfather." He laughed, but it came out bitter. "All these years, all these fights with you, Daniel, all because I believed what my father taught me, that we had to keep ourselves separate, pure, better." He looked up at Amara. "And the woman who started it all looked just like you." Amara's chest tightened. She didn't know what to say. Edward stood again. He walked back to the portrait and placed his palm flat against the canvas. "Then she isn't ruining our legacy," he whispered. "She's restoring it." Tears ran down Catherine's face. Daniel's eyes were red. Edward turned to face them. "I've been a fool." "Dad," Daniel started. "No, let me finish." Edward's voice cracked. "I almost died 2 weeks ago. Lying in that hospital bed, I had time to think about what matters, about what I'd be leaving behind." He looked at Daniel. I thought I'd be leaving a legacy, a name, a fortune, but you know what I realized? None of that means anything if I lose my son. He moved toward Daniel slowly. I'm sorry. God, Daniel, I'm so sorry for the things I said, for trying to control you, for making you choose between love and family. Daniel's composure broke. His father pulled him into an embrace. They held each other, both crying, both releasing years of tension and pain. Catherine hugged Amara, both of them watching through tears. When they finally separated, Edward wiped his eyes. He looked older but somehow lighter, like he'd put down a weight he'd been carrying too long. I hear congratulations are in order, he said. Daniel blinked. You heard about the engagement? Your mother told me. Edward actually smiled, small but genuine. When's the wedding? They plan to marry at the courthouse the following week. Small, simple, just them and a few people they loved. No big ceremony, no pressure, just two people making a promise to each other. Tara took Amara dress shopping. They found a simple ivory dress at a boutique downtown. Nothing fancy. But when Amara tried it on, Tara cried. You look beautiful, she said. Daniel's a lucky man. I'm lucky too. Yeah, you are. Tara hugged her tight. I'm proud of you, baby sister, for fighting for what you wanted, for not giving up when it got hard. The night before the wedding, Amara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed thinking about everything that had happened. The gala, the eviction, the luncheon, Edward's stroke, the portrait. It felt like a lifetime compressed into 6 months. Daniel stirred beside her. You okay? Just thinking. About how we got here. All the things that had to happen for us to end up in this moment. He pulled her closer. Regrets? Not one. Me neither. He kissed her forehead. Tomorrow you become Amara Whitmore, or you become Daniel Lewis. He laughed. I like that. Daniel Lewis has a nice ring to it. They fell asleep, tangled together, hearts beating in sync. The courthouse was quiet on Tuesday morning. Amara wore her ivory dress. Daniel wore a simple grey suit. Tara stood as maid of honor, wearing scrubs because she'd come straight from a night shift. Catherine stood beside her, elegant and composed. Lucas was there too, bouncing with excitement. You look like a princess, he told Amara. The judge was a kind woman with silver hair. She smiled at them warmly. Are we ready? She asked. Almost, Catherine said. We're waiting for one more person. Amara looked at Daniel, confused. He shrugged. Then the door opened. Edward Whitmore walked in. He wore a suit but no tie. His hair was slightly messy, like he'd been rushing. He looked nervous. I'm sorry I'm late, he said. Traffic was worse than I expected. Daniel stared at his father. You came. Did you think I wouldn't? Edward moved closer. He looked at Amara. May I? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Edward took her hands. I know I don't deserve to be here. I know I've caused you both tremendous pain. But if you'll allow me, I'd like to witness this. To be part of your new beginning. Tears blurred Amara's vision. Of course you can stay. Edward smiled. Then he stepped back, standing beside Catherine. The judge began the ceremony. Amara barely heard the words. She focused on Daniel's face, on the love in his eyes, on the feeling of his hands holding hers. When it came time for vows, Daniel spoke first. Amara, you've taught me what courage really means. Not money or status or approval, just the simple bravery of being yourself and loving honestly. His voice shook. I promise to choose you every day, to stand beside you, to build a life with you that honors both where we come from and where we're going. Amara's turn. She took a breath. Daniel, you saw me when I felt invisible, valued me when others didn't, chose me when it cost you everything. She squeezed his hands. I promise to love you fiercely, to be your partner in all things, to remind you every day that you made the right choice. The judge smiled. By the power vested in me by the state of South Carolina, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss. Daniel pulled her close and kissed her softly. Behind them, Tara whooped. Lucas cheered. Catherine cried happy tears. And Edward Whitmore, standing in a courthouse watching his son marry a woman he'd once called a threat, smiled. I need witnesses to sign the marriage certificate, the judge said. Catherine signed first. Then Tara. The judge looked around. I need one more. Edward stepped forward. May I? Daniel looked at his father. Something passed between them. Forgiveness. Acceptance. Love. Please, Daniel said. Edward took the pen and signed his name. Edward James Whitmore. Right there on the document that made Amara officially part of his family. When they left the courthouse, the sun was bright and warm. They stood on the steps, posing for photos on Tara's phone. Catherine fussed with Amara's dress. Lucas wanted to hold the marriage certificate. "Come to the house," Edward said suddenly. "Please, I'd like to... I owe you both something." They drove to the estate in a small caravan. Amara held Daniel's hand the whole way, the wedding ring on her finger catching the light. Inside, Edward led them to the formal sitting room. He retrieved something from his desk drawer, a folder. "I've been meeting with my lawyers," he said, "making some changes." He handed the folder to Daniel. "Open it?" Daniel did. His face went white. "What is it?" Amara asked. "The deed," Daniel whispered, "to the Whitmore Manor, the old family house out near the coast." "It's yours," Edward said. "Both of yours. It needs work. Hasn't been lived in for years, but it's a good house. Strong bones, room to grow." Amara couldn't breathe. "We can't accept this." "You can. You must." Edward's voice was firm but kind. "I'm not giving it to you out of guilt. I'm giving it to you because it should belong to people who will fill it with love, who will create new memories, better memories." Catherine touched Amara's arm. "It's a beautiful house, and it's been empty too long." "I don't know what to say," Daniel said. Edward pulled his son into another embrace. "Say you'll visit. Say you'll let me know the people you're becoming. Say you'll give me a chance to be better." "I will. We will." Daniel's voice broke. "Thank you, Dad." Amara watched this moment between father and son, watched years of pain begin to heal, and she understood something. Forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was the bravest thing of all. Edward turned to her. He held out his hand. She took it. "Welcome to the family," he said. "For real this time." She couldn't speak, just nodded and let him pull her into a careful hug. They stayed for lunch. Catherine made sandwiches. Lucas showed them his drawings. Edward told stories about the manor house, about learning to swim in the creek behind it, about summer nights on the porch, about the garden his own mother had tended. It felt normal, like family. When they finally left, the sun was setting. Amara leaned against Daniel in the car, exhausted and happy. "We're married," she said. "We're married," he agreed. "How does it feel?" "Perfect. Terrifying. Perfect." He laughed. "Same." That night, in their tiny apartment above the bakery, they celebrated with cheap champagne and pizza. Tomorrow they'd start planning their future, but tonight, they just existed together as husband and wife. 1 year later, the gallery had grown. They'd moved to a larger space and hired 2 part-time employees. Amara's restoration business thrived. Daniel's design work brought in steady income. They weren't rich, but they were stable. The manor house had become their home. They'd spent months fixing it up, painting walls, refinishing floors, planting gardens. It was still a work in progress, but it was theirs. And today, they were opening the Whitmore Legacy Gallery, a new venture, bigger than the original gallery, dedicated to celebrating diverse art and artists, a space that honored both tradition and change. The opening was packed. Local artists, community members, press, even the mayor came. Catherine stood near the entrance, greeting guests. She'd become instrumental in the gallery's success, using her connections to bring in donors and supporters. Edward sat in a chair by the window. He'd had another small health scare 2 months ago, nothing serious but enough to slow him down. He tired easily now, but his eyes were bright as he watched people admire the artwork. Tara arrived with a date, a doctor from her hospital. She winked at Amara. "Finally taking your advice about putting myself out there." "About time," Amara teased. Lucas, now 11 and taller, unveiled a plaque near the entrance. It read, "Legacy is love preserved." Daniel had designed it. Amara had commissioned a local artist to create it. Together, they'd built something meaningful. The evening flowed smoothly. People praised the artwork. Several pieces sold. New artists signed up for future exhibitions. By the time the last guest left, Amara felt proud and exhausted. "Come on," Daniel said, taking her hand. "Let's get some air." They walked to the small beach behind the manor house. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Waves lapped gently at the shore. They sat on the sand, Amara leaning against Daniel's chest. "Can you believe we're here?" she asked. "After everything?" "Some days, no. Some days it feels like a dream. Good dream or bad dream? Best dream." He kissed the top of her head. "Though I'm pretty sure I'm awake." A car pulled up to the house. They turned to see a news van. "Oh no," Amara said. "I forgot about the interview." They'd agreed to do a story for the local station, a piece about the gallery and its mission. The reporter was a young woman named Jessica, who'd covered their story from the beginning. They walked back to the house, brushing sand from their clothes. The interview took place on the porch with the sunset behind them. Jessica asked about the gallery, about their relationship, about the journey that brought them here. Then she turned to Edward, who'd agreed to participate. "Mr. Whitmore, when we first covered this story a year ago, you were quoted as saying that a black wife would ruin your family's legacy. What would you say now?" Edward was quiet for a moment. The camera captured his face, lined with age and wisdom earned the hard way. "I'd say I was wrong," he said simply. "I was afraid of change, afraid of losing control, afraid of admitting that the world I grew up in wasn't the world my son deserved to live in." He looked at Amara and Daniel, standing together. "My daughter-in-law didn't ruin our legacy. She became it. She showed me that true legacy isn't about bloodlines or bank accounts. It's about love, courage, the willingness to grow beyond what you were taught." His voice caught. "She made me a better man, made our family better, and for that, I'll be forever grateful." Jessica smiled. "That's beautiful." "Any final thoughts?" Catherine spoke up. "Our family was broken. We didn't even realize how broken until Amara held up a mirror and made us look. That's the gift of love. It doesn't just accept us as we are. It challenges us to become who we should be." The interview ended. The crew packed up and left. As night fell, they sat on the porch together. Edward and Catherine, Daniel and Amara, Tara and her date. Lucas fell asleep on the porch swing. "You know what I was thinking," Edward said suddenly. He looked frail in the lamplight, but his smile was genuine. "We should make this a tradition. Every year on your anniversary we gather here, all of us, family." "I'd like that," Daniel said. "Me too," Amara added. Catherine raised her glass of sweet tea. "To family, the one we're born with and the one we choose." They clinked glasses, laughed, told stories as stars appeared overhead. Later, when everyone had gone home or gone to bed, Amara and Daniel walked back to the beach. The moon was full, reflecting off the water. They stood at the edge of the waves, arms around each other. "Do you ever think about that first night?" Daniel asked. "At the gala?" "All the time. If you could go back and change it, would you?" Amara thought about it, about the pain and struggle, about the judgment and hardship, about everything they'd fought through to get here. "No," she said finally, "because all of it, every hard moment, brought us to this, to us, to home, to home." Daniel agreed. They kissed as waves washed over their feet. Behind them, the manor house glowed with warm light. Ahead of them, the ocean stretched endless and full of possibility. They'd lost things to get here, money, comfort, certainty, but they'd gained so much more: love, purpose, family, a legacy worth building. And as they stood there, black and white side by side, they were proof that the best legacies weren't preserved in amber. They were created new with each generation, built on courage and hope and the revolutionary act of loving beyond boundaries. Somewhere in the house, Edward Whitmore slept peacefully for the first time in months. In his study, Elizabeth Whitmore's restored portrait hung in a place of honor, a grandmother he'd never known, whose face reminded him that change was part of his inheritance too. In a hospital across town, Tara finished her shift and thought about second chances. In Atlanta, Lucas dreamed about art and family and belonging. And on a beach in South Carolina, two people held each other and watched the moon rise. They'd fought for this, earned this, chosen this. They'd been told their love would ruin everything. Instead, it had saved them all. 6 months later, Amara discovered she was pregnant. The news came on a Tuesday morning. She'd been feeling tired, queasy. Tara had insisted she take a test. 2 pink lines. She sat on the bathroom floor staring at it. A baby. Their baby. Part her, part Daniel. Part the love they'd fought so hard to protect. When Daniel came home, she met him at the door. She didn't say anything, just held up the test. His face went through a dozen emotions in 2 seconds. Shock, fear, joy, wonder. "Are you serious?" he whispered. "Very serious." He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. They told family that weekend. Catherine cried with joy. Tara made jokes about being the fun aunt. Lucas wanted to know if he could teach the baby to draw. Edward held Amara's hands and said simply, "Thank you for giving us a future." 9 months later, their daughter was born. They named her Elizabeth Tara Whitmore, Beth for short. She was perfect, tiny, beautiful, with Daniel's eyes and Amara's smile and a future full of possibility. Edward met her in the hospital. He held his granddaughter with shaking hands and tears streaming down his face. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "Welcome to the family. Let me tell you about your great-great-great-grandmother. She was brave like your mother, strong like your father, and she would have loved you so much." Catherine took photos. Tara hovered nearby, ready to give medical advice. Lucas pressed his face against the hospital room window, waving excitedly. And Amara, watching her husband hold their daughter while his father looked on with pride, felt something settle in her chest. Peace. Complete and total peace. They'd built this, against all odds, through pain and struggle and moments when giving up seemed easier. They'd built a family, a legacy, a love story that would be told for generations. A story that proved what Amara had known all along. Love didn't destroy legacies. It created them. It made them real. It made them matter. And as the sun set outside the hospital window, painting the sky in colors too beautiful for words, Amara closed her eyes and felt grateful for the pain that made them stronger, for the struggle that proved their commitment, for the love that changed everything. She opened her eyes and looked at her family, chosen and given, blood and bond. This was legacy. This was home. This was everything. The interview went viral. Edward's words, "She didn't ruin our legacy, she became it," were shared across social media, quoted in articles, used in speeches about family and acceptance and growth. People reached out from across the country, telling their own stories of interracial love, of family rejection and eventual acceptance, of the courage it took to choose love over approval. The Whitmore Legacy Gallery expanded again. They added an education wing, offering free art classes to kids from all backgrounds. Amara developed a program teaching restoration techniques to young artists. Daniel's design firm thrived. He specialized in creating spaces that brought communities together. Edward lived to see his granddaughter start kindergarten. He died peacefully at 70, sitting in his favorite chair, overlooking the garden Elizabeth had once tended. At his funeral, Daniel spoke. He talked about his father's journey, how a proud man had learned humility, how fear had given way to love, how it's never too late to change. Catherine lived another 15 years. She spent them traveling with Tara's family, volunteering at the gallery, teaching Beth about art and history and the power of persistence. Lucas grew up to be an artist. His first major exhibition was held at the Whitmore Legacy Gallery. He painted portraits of families, all kinds of families, celebrating diversity and love. Tara married her doctor. They had 3 kids who spent every summer at the manor house with their cousins. And Beth, she grew up knowing she came from a love story, a real one, messy and hard, and completely worthwhile. She grew up seeing her mother's face in her great-great-great-grandmother's portrait, understanding that she carried history in her blood, complicated, beautiful, real. She grew up knowing that legacy wasn't something you inherited, it was something you earned, every single day, with love.